In this video, we'll be seeing how we can get the enemy to kill us, but also how we can kill the enemy, and it will play a sound and we'll do a little bounce after doing it. To get started with making an enemy that we can kill, first of all head back to the enemy scene. Now the way we're going to get this to work is we're going to have two separate hitboxes, or two separate hit areas on our enemy. So the first one we've already added, and this is the hit area that damages the player, but we're also going to add another one above the enemy or on top of it, so that when our player touches this one, that one will be for triggering what kills the enemy. So over on the left, if we right click on enemy, we're going to add a child node, and we're going to add another area 2D. Then on the area 2D, right click, add child node, and we're going to add a collision shape 2D. Now let's rename the area 2D to hit area, and we'll rename the collision shape 2D we just added to hitbox. Now select the hitbox, and we're going to add a new collision shape on the right here, and we will do a new rectangle. Now drag the rectangle to go around the top of the enemy. Don't forget, this enemy is animated, so if I go to the animation toolbar down at the bottom and select the animated sprite 2D and hit play, you can see that the enemy's head bobs up a bit, so I've made my collider match with the top of that animation. Now let's add a little bit of code to get us started with this, so make sure the hit area 2D is selected and head on over to your script view. Make sure the enemy script is selected. And within our script, what we're going to do is make sure again that hit area is selected and go to the node option over here in the top right and select the body entered 2D, double click and click connect. Now this is a signal that triggers whenever something enters the new hit box that we just added. So just like in our other one, we will check if it's the player first of all. And if it is the player, we will run the queue-free line of code, which will remove the enemy from the game if the player touches it. So let's test that. So if I jump on the enemy's head, it dies. However, there's going to be a couple of bugs just now. So for example, if I run at the enemy from the side, both me and the enemy end up respawning and dying. So we need to fix that. Now one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm actually going to head back into the player script over here, and I'm going to make our respawning function a little more efficient. So down here, when we were taking damage from the spike traps, we would set the fact that we took damage to true. So I'm actually going to move this line of code, so I'm going to get rid of it from here, and I'm going to put it inside the respawn function instead. This is more efficient because now we can track whether or not we've taken damage just by calling the respawn function, and indeed when our enemy damages the player, I also want to say that they took damage, so it's going to be more efficient for us to put it in the respawn method rather than having to call a line that makes the player take damage to true separately. So back to the code on the enemy. At the top of the enemy script, I'm going to create a new variable called isDead, and we'll set that equal to false, so that at the start of the game or when the enemy spawns, we're saying that they're not dead. Now first let's update this original function, which is the one that kills the player. So we're only allowed to kill the player if the enemy is still alive, so we'll say and isDead equals false. And we also want to check that the player has not taken any damage recently. Then down here for our new hitbox, we will also say that isDead must be false when we go to get killed by the player, because if they're already dead, they shouldn't be able to be killed. Now let's specifically solve the problem that is causing both the enemy and the player to die at the same time. You'll notice when we just ran that there, I've actually added in a couple of print statements, so we're printing out the position of the enemy and the position of the player within the world. And down here you can see that when the enemy and the player touched, the enemy had a position on the Y axis of 496 and the player had a position of 495. But what we're basically going to do is we're going to add a little if statement that checks that the player is definitely above the enemy if we're killing it. So we don't want to kill the enemy when the player's Y position is less or equal to the enemy's own Y position. Now just note that you don't actually need these two lines here, the print statements, that's just to help show what's happening, but you will want to add this line that I've just added. So we're saying if the body's global position on the Y is less than the position of the enemy's position on the Y, then we can kill the enemy. So basically in short, this is just checking, or the idea is that we're going to check that the player is above the enemy, but if we run this again, the issue still exists. Now that's why I've got my print statements to help show. So at the moment when the player and the enemy just touched, the enemy was on position 496 and the player was on position 495. And so the enemy died because the player's position of 495 was indeed less than the enemy's position of 496. So the way to get around that is just to add a little +2 in here to ensure that our player is definitely going to be above the enemy. So if we run this now, there we go, that looks pretty good. And if I jump on the enemy from the top, it dies without the inconsistency in the player and enemy both dying. So that's the functionality working. Let's jazz it up a little bit. So I'm going to go back to the player script, and just at the top here, I'm going to make a new function. So I will call it func bounce after stomp. So what we're going to get to happen is when we land on top of the enemy, the player's going to do a little extra jump. And all we need to write is that the velocity dot y equals, and then some value, I'll just say minus 300, and then go back to the enemy script. And when we kill the enemy, we are going to run that. So body dot bounce after stomp. Let's run it. And there we go. When we kill our enemy now, we've got a cool little bounce. And the last thing we'll get working here to jazz it up again is we'll add a little bit of audio for when we kill the enemy. So we can go to our enemy node in the left here, right click to add a child node and look for audio stream player 2D. Click create. Now make sure on the right hand side to select your inspector. Then we're going to go into the assets folder. I'm going to go to Brachy's tutorials and find the sounds folder. And I'm going to use the explosion sound as the sound for killing my enemy. I'm going to set the bus for the SFX. Now let's go to the top of our enemy script. And at the very top here, I'm going to create a reference to my animated sprite 2D. So just click and drag from the left and hold Control, then let go. Now what we'll do is when we kill the enemy, kind of like what we did previously with the player's respawn, is we're going to set the visibility to false. We'll also go back to the top of our script here and create a reference to our audio stream player. So left click and drag and hold the Control key, then let go. Then we will play our audio. So dot play. And finally, before we delete the enemy, let's create a little timer to delay them getting killed. About half a second should be okay, and let's test this. There we go. So we can now also kill the enemy with a nice little bounce and some sound.